TV1 රැස්වීදෙන ජීවිතේ
with Faraz Shaukutali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Today, our title, Sri Lanka Boxing On. Indeed we are, aren't we? But my guest today is absolutely sensational and very special. He is a person who's touched thousands and thousands of lives with the work he's done. He's had a rather sizzling career in corporate Sri Lanka. He's inspired thousands and motivated even more. He's also made a special contribution to the world of boxing, but more than anything else, I think he must be the national treasure in terms of motivation and inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure to welcome to Newsline Live Mr. Dian Gomes, corner man. Good evening, Dian, and welcome to Newsline Live.
Thank you for your kind words.
It's absolutely a pleasure, really, to have the corner man right here. How important is, you've had such a successful career in the corporate world. All those years ago when the garment industry started, there was only negativity. But today it would be fair to say that Sri Lanka is got a name for itself, and it is people like you who've managed to bring Sri Lanka up to this great position. How did you do it?
I think I did a lot of things by default without knowing what the implications, what the ultimate game would be. I worked for a great visionary chairman, Mahesh Amalian, who was always looked at the future, of course guided by great apparel leaders like Martin Trust, who gave us the joint ventures to do market for Victoria's Secrets and setting up plants in all remote places in Sri Lanka first and then globally. When I set about the whole career, I come from a finance background. Of course, the company trained me at the best business schools like Harvard and Wharton. Nevertheless, was to bring all that knowledge and the management skills back to village environment. And I've realized that you needed to find heroes of our time, then give people respect, give them a brand identity. And I spent a lot of time developing people and of course recruiting people who are better than you, better than myself. And that was the initial journey. But of course, success breeds success. When we started building the brand, building, bringing technology like SAP into apparel, and getting the technology through our joint venture partners from the Germans, from the Brits, and subsequently the Japanese style of management, I think we became world class. And I always believed, and my chairman also believed, that Sri Lankans given the right environment, the right training and the right facilities can be world class. Whether it's cricket, whether it's making lingerie for Victoria's Secrets or any other brands, or whether it's boxing. It is the same principle. Give them the right training, recruit the right talent, and create an environment and create a culture. So, in a nutshell, when you put all of them together, you create a successful company or a successful organization.
And Sri Lanka has had so much of, I suppose, bad luck. We've had a 30-year plus war. In between we've had sort of insurgencies and so on. The war really sort of downgraded us and made us all feel very sad, and all of us in Sri Lanka were rather challenged. But how would you begin to address the frustrations of, let's say, the people of the former conflict areas, for example?
I think I was instrumental in setting up an apparel plant for MAS Holdings nearly 10 years ago in Kilinochchi, and most of the people that to be recruited were ex-LTT combatants. And I've realized people anywhere in the world, whether it's in North, whether it's in Bangladesh, whether it's in Kenya or Ethiopia, Indonesia, where I've set up plants, one simple cardinal rule that we need to remember is humanity and respect. If you give any person, you can give them the best facilities, the best training, but if you don't give them respect, it is a failure. So my learning, operating in different parts of my country and different parts of the world, that's one thing you need to attack. Go to the ground level, understand people, understand their frustrations, and give them respect. And to make sure that is retained, that is sustained. For an example, when I set it up, I can remember, I knew only few Tamil words, and I said, and there was a temple in there in the plant, and I get down from my vehicle sometimes, the few times I get down by helicopter. First thing I go is to the Kovil there, and being a Buddhist, I still put my head on the ground and worship. And there are thousands of people who is looking at me. They know I'm Sinhalese, they know I'm Buddhist, strong beliefs, but I respect them in their own place. I show them and I lead them by example. And when I told them first time, when I spoke to them, thousands, I told them, first thing is I want to make the situation better. We have finished a war. I have come to give you as much as possible, respect, and more than profit, I want to do things. Two things, we are funding an orphanage in Kilinochchi. I want to make sure that we made a real difference to that orphanage. And the second thing, since I was the president of boxing also at that time, that I said, I will start boxing here, and we would most probably get a medal from the North, because I felt, the combatants, might be able to give me that medal for my country. I never talked about making lingerie, I never talked about anything else or profit. You get the ground situation right, you give them respect, whether it's a North, and I operated in much more tougher areas, it's the same thing. Humanity is the most important thing that you have to break first.
So it is true then, a corporate's greatest asset is actually not its reserves, but its people.
Of course. It's always a war on talent for better people anywhere in the world. And one thing Harvard Business School says, you can give the best salaries, the best environment, and the most comfortable office environment, but if you have a great boss, people don't leave. So you start with yourself. Are you a great boss? Would you care for your people, and would you lead them by example? And if your integrity is right, people will follow you to the four corners of the earth. That's my simple philosophy. Recruit people who are better than you, groom them, create the environment, and the war is on.
Quite literally a different war.
Yes.
To make Sri Lanka great and good.
I think, our cricket team just showed us.
Yes.
Our netball team just showed us.
Absolutely.
We have got boxing medals. So, given the right environment, given the right situations, we can win.
But Dian, Gomes, it is true though, isn't it? Sri Lanka, if you examine the people of Sri Lanka, if you do so very sort of independently, you will only come to the conclusion that the people of Sri Lanka are absolutely amazing, because they've got all these troubles to cope with and so on, and they're so resilient. They're resilient is...
We are absolutely resilient. We are absolutely talented. It is the systems, it is the leaders, it is the followers as Sri Lankans who messes it up. We don't learn from mistakes. 70 years has shown us we are still not learned from the mistakes. Unfortunately, We are educated, most of us. We have a great middle class. Our kids are pretty smart. I yet to come across a Sri Lankan doctor, a Sri Lankan accountant, Sri Lankan professional, engineer who has failed anywhere else in the world. We have 250 people in the NASA, scientists. But why do they fail? We all understand it. We don't do anything about it. We do the stupid stuff. We elect the wrong people. We keep on making the same mistakes. And life goes on.
Why do you think this resilience and this greatness that is in the whole of Sri Lanka, but not in Parliament? How come this greatness and this goodness hasn't touched the Parliament?
Unfortunately, there are good people and bad people. And there are educated people and not so educated people. It's a bunch of people which gets elected, unfortunately, by different criteria and different motivations. So I can't change that, nor will any prudent person as well. But we need to think much more critically at the next elections, or looking at our kids, looking at the younger generation. They might think very differently. They might understand much more what the country needs. You know, history has shown, you know, the insurrections, why? The North conflict, why? You know, the Aragalaya recently, why? You know, we need to learn from this. Our politicians need to learn from this. But I don't know whether they have learned, whether they still keep on making the same mistakes.
But how do you think, how is contemporary history likely to record the Aragalaya?
I think it has positive and negative aspects, because we really don't know whether there was an unseen force or unseen hands like what is reported. We also knew that there were clear frustrations on corruption, nepotism, and bad decisions. So it's a mixed bag of things. There was no clear leadership I saw in the struggle. A clear leadership and a clear philosophy, and what would be the end game, what are we going to do about it. So every revolution, every changes, they had a very clear, whether it's to look at any other country and history, there are very specific issues and very specific leadership driving them. But I didn't see any of those, and the confidence level of the country as a whole didn't see a clear leadership in any of those. So I think that's my point of view.
Do you think that the Aragalaya has it achieved whatever it set out to do, to change the corrupt leaders and so on?
Not necessarily, but I think it's a great eye-opener for anyone who's getting into politics, and the current politicians and the current leaders in any other sphere. I think it's a great eye-opener. They've realized the country won't just, you know, take whatever on face value anymore.
And Dian Gomes, tell me, what would have been the negativity? How much of this has affected brand Sri Lanka? You know, I don't mean how much of Aragalaya. I mean how much of the corruption and this constant reports of people asking investors for money, and deal only with me, deal only with X, Y, or Z, and how I know it's exhausting, but how much of that affects brand Sri Lanka? You've built great brands.
I think it has worked very badly against us. I think, for an example, tourism, that is the main industry that Sri Lanka will depend on, and although apparel is much more larger, but I think what is a sustainable industry for us is tourism. That's number one. It has got affected very badly. First, the bomb, an Easter bomb. That was bad enough. Then came the COVID, so the hotels really got hit. Then came the Aragalaya. It really killed everything. So I think, looking at it, at least 1 million people will go out of business if we don't act fast, if we don't bring it down, if we don't make the changes, etc. So the brand, in that sense, in the eyes of the world, got damaged. Also got damaged after a successful protest and all that. People going into president's office and jumping into the pools and behaving and stealing and looting created a very bad taste in the educated people's mind and in anybody else's mind, because it never happened other than in places like Iraq or in Libya. So that also kind of left a bit of bad taste.
But if that left a bad taste, what kind of a taste would have been left for the decades of looting that the politicians have engaged in? Almost
I think
willy-nilly.
I condone both. I mean, I would say we need to have some fair play and justice. And I've realized globally, getting hold of the money or the loot, I would say, the stolen money from our country and our generations is very difficult to nail and bring it back, because wherever...
But they need to make a start, though. The asset recovery business.
They need to make a start, but it's a very difficult thing for us, because wherever people, loot and kept the loot are places which are called safe havens, corrupt governments, and places where they will not open the books, etc. So it's very difficult for anyone, unless countries like US or UK or the West really supports, it's very difficult to recover them.
On that note, we'll take a short break and take a peek at this evening's headline news, and we'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Anka eke araksita iti ginipetti. Surya ginipetti.
Without a free press, democracy cannot survive, says United Nations Secretary General. Rajapaksa family enriched themselves at the expense of the Sri Lankan people, reveals a US Senate report. Chatham Street flooded with protests against suppression. Young monk arrested over the murder of a senior monk in Sidua. Bids for the Gaul harbour.
Newsfirst headlines. Main sponsor.
Anka eke araksita iti ginipetti. Surya ginipetti. Lovatama eliya denna dilena Surya. Amataka vinnema නැති නමගේ Surya. Kohotin දැල්වෙන ගිනි කුර Surya. Kavadat namagat gini petti Surya. Kavadat namagat gini petti Surya. Kavadat kotanat samage vishwase dinagat anka eke araksita iti gini petti. Surya gini petti.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. We are in conversation with the corner man, Dian Gomes. Ms. Gomes, it's interesting your take on brand Sri Lanka and so on. But and you made reference to the West. Don't you think that one of the fundamental things that the West ought to be doing, especially our main trading partners, is that they ought to be encouraging and even to an extent insisting that Sri Lanka has something on the lines of a political donations act, some form of election funding or political funding law that can be implemented?
I wish they do that kind of thing, but I think at this particular moment with the current situation and understand the politics in Sri Lanka, it will be just a dream for us.
Just a dream?
It will be a dream. It won't happen. There are much more important things that we need to attack and put it down.
But this sort of this endemic corruption is what is actually holding back the very people, the very youth that you inspire and mentor and provide leadership to.
I take a very pragmatic look at life in my age. I was when I was young, I was more leftist, but I would say now I'm more socialist. And I've seen the world, being on the board of boxing, world body, I travel to 4 corners of the earth. I see countries which are sophisticated, which is the West. Then I see countries much more worse, much more high risk than Sri Lanka. And anywhere in the world, it is the people which is always corrupt. There is corruption at everywhere, at every stage, but some are tightly controlled, some are not in various countries. So I don't think there will ever be a world where there's zero corruption or zero thing. It's like you are dealing with humans, and humans always deal with what's in for me syndrome.
But we can't afford to lower our standard because of that.
That is why the judiciary, the electing of the right leaders, the right politicians and the right people is so important. But it doesn't happen overnight. We need to keep on trying. We need to make small changes at least and to move on, so that any country which is, started this journey didn't like they say, Rome was not built overnight. I think we need to go in the right direction. I think the younger generation must insist on certain cardinal rules of the people who are going to lead this country.
Almost on the same lines, you've, as we mentioned earlier and as everybody knows in Sri Lanka, you've had an absolutely glittering corporate career. But what would you say to the youth of today who are starting off, setting up businesses and so on? What advice would you give them?
I think it's a very, very tough game for them at this particular moment. Look at the bank interest, look at the dollars, and look at the restrictions.
But what about the standards? What kind of standards ought to be followed?
I think they are much more intelligent, but I think we need to change the university systems, we need to change the school systems, we need to overhaul a lot of things. Say we need to get look at the brain drain. Any kid who goes to study in England, Australia or US, they won't come back now. But why can't we get the universities here?
But what advice specifically to these young leaders? How do they should they be reacting to these things, and what should they be doing?
Because the biggest reason here is nobody wants to make unpopular decisions, because unpopular decisions will take them out of politics. They won't get the vote. Say for example, we all know we can't sustain any loss-making corporations.
Getting into the job market, what advice would you give them then, young people?
It's very difficult. I think if you talk to 10 young people who are studying fairly in the university level, their whole motivation is to get off Sri Lanka, to get to Australia, get to England, get to US, or leave the country and find somewhere else. And earlier there was brain
But not
drain.
everyone has that option or indeed wants that option. There was a young man at one of these protests. He said, look, I'm not going anywhere. He said the 225 plus 1 can go. I'm staying. So what advice would you give people entering the job market? What kind of standards should they be aspiring to?
I think first of all they must understand the skills needed for the job. The universities and the corporates, there's no skill match. There are so many things which, maybe, theology or Pali or something which does not, get you a job in the corporates. So we are producing graduates.
We need to match them.
There has to be a match. There has to be proper internship programs. There should be proper training programs. There should be better vocational institutes.
Would you advise these people entering, the young people entering in the job market, to be aware that they must not tolerate any corruption in any shape or form, for example?
I think we all do, but the corporates are to be blamed. The corporates also take the shortcuts. Everybody wants to survive. They don't want to waste time, so they get the easy way out.
But I think if you answer this question,
yes,
then we'll sort the whole thing out.
Yes.
What are the leadership secrets of Dian Gomes?
Mine is basically recruit people who are better than me. Number one.
Okay.
I always recruited talented guys who are more educated, much smarter than me. I was giving them the environment, I was giving them the leadership, and I was giving them the motivation. If you look at all my PAs today, they are group directors of MS Holdings and Hela Clothing and all the places, and your group director Shaban Daniel is the best example. And they were always smart, they were always brilliant, and they were always better than me. So I would teach them tricks and I would teach them leadership and motivate them. But number one rule is that recruit people who are better than me. Number two, recruit people on meritocracy. Put the right man on the right job, and if they are not performing, get them off the bus. Put them to the bench. Whether he's your favorite, it doesn't matter. Put them on the bench, put the right man on the job. This country needs that. Put the right people on the right place and on the right job. If you do that, this country will prosper. Today I can't be running the army. I'm not fit enough, I'm not trained. I can't put you as the governor of central bank because you're not fit enough to do that job. Put the right people on the job, on meritocracy. Not look at their religion, not look at their ethnic background, on what's good for the country, like Singapore. If you look at the ministers, you look at the top bureaucrats, look at the civil service, they are the best. You don't put a bus driver or a meat merchant into a critical job, or somebody who's not passed his O-levels or grade 8 into a critical leadership role. You can't. But we elect people like that.
And we also are very myopic. Yesterday's rapists, extortionists and murderers are today's lawmakers.
Yes.
Is that a culture that's very difficult to break, especially with your leadership secrets?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult.
How important is teaching people to learn to box then?
It is as difficult because number one, boxing is a very disciplined kind of game.
Yeah.
It's not like hitting each other. It's think of strategy, it's about resilience, it's about training, it's about defending yourself. And when I train, I put on the gloves. Not anymore. But I can remember my coach was late Danton Obesekara, first Asian to captain Cambridge. And if you drop your hand down, he would give you a slap, and you don't know where it's coming from.
What you've just explained about boxing seems to me to be the right recipe to survive and make Sri Lanka move ahead. Dian Gomes, cornerman, thank you very much for your time on Newsline Live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You always put me on the spot.
Thank you, and that's the way it was on Newsline Live with Dian Gomes, Cornerman. It's now time for the primetime news. Take care and God bless you all.